All right, so let's make a formal introduction for our listeners. Good morning to you, Jim Ottaway. My name is Claudio. I'm calling from Washington, D.C., from the studios in Fairfax City. We're very humble and grateful that Jim accepted our invitation to our show. Jim, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you very much, Claudio. How are you going?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much. So let's start. We always start with this question. You know, we are living in crazy time with the pandemic from the last 2 years. You know, if you're a touring musician, you cannot tour. You're working from home, perhaps. You know, have been difficult for not just a musician, but for everybody in the world. How COVID affected you, your family, how you holding up, man?
Oh, look, very, very well, actually, Claudio. I mean, we've been very lucky here in Australia in relation to COVID. Look, it has, you know, it's been bad. We've had people lose their lives, people lose their jobs and all that type of thing, sadly, but not as bad as what's been happening all around the world, particularly in the States and, you know, in China and in the UK and such. We've been very lucky in that regard. From my perspective, I am very much a homebody. I very much like to stick around the home and do things here around the local area. So in a way, it hasn't affected me too much. It's probably given me an opportunity to catch up on things that, you know, that haven't been done for years around the house, and, you know, to focus more on the music and the composing, and just, I suppose, a time to take a step back. Because our lives can be very full on, very fast paced. You know what the world's like these days. Everything happens like that. And I think it's allowed me and the people I've spoken to who I know here to take a step back. My family have been okay. I've got you know, 3 sisters and their families, and unfortunately in more recent times, I think 3 of them have caught COVID, but mild cases, thank goodness. And in my field of friends, too, very, very few have got COVID. So, you know, from my perspective, it didn't affect my life too much at this point in time. Mind you, it's still out there, isn't it? I mean, we're getting another, was it a 3rd wave or something they call it? They're coming through Australia at the moment. And of course, it's here in winter, it's the flu season as well. But look, it's given me an opportunity to catch up on things and to try and focus a little bit more on the music part of it. Claudio, how about yourself? Have you been affected?
Yeah, I'm very, I mean, it's very sad here in the United States. Over 1 million people died, you know, and how many millions in the world? We have you know, a crazy president before that didn't believe that stuff existed. And, you know, I don't want to go there into politics, but it's terrible. I mean, a lot of people that I know have died, and I feel very bad. In a way, for me, you know, I was going in my life. I'm a computer scientist. I will go to my life, you know, teaching and then working and doing other stuff. I was going very, very fast. And the COVID allowed me to slow down and do a reevaluation of my life, and then determine what was important, what was not important. I was doing a lot of stuff that I wasn't happy with. I was doing it, right? And I slow down. I look at my life. I say, you know, music is very important to me. You know, it's always been, and I want to put this radio together. And at the beginning, it was very hard. I want to begin interviewing people. I want to see more shows and whatever. And it works out well for me. And also, I did an evaluation of my life in the sense that I needed to slow down and see that, hey, I may not live, I may not make it, you know. My wife may not make it, my son may not make it. So I needed to be very careful, you know, working from home, don't going out that much, just going to the grocery to buy the stuff. And I was slowing down a lot. And, you know, I began examining the simple things in life, you know, like they say in the United States, smell the roses.
Yeah.
You know, it's literally what I did. You know, I have like a good garden in the 2nd floor of the house, and I you know, thanks God that we are alive, and I'm good. I'm very fortunate that a lot of people didn't make it. You know, so it was
terrible situation all around the world, really. And I suppose some people have, as you've said, just taken the chance to take a step back, reassess things, and you know, clean the windows and the curtains.
Yeah, and there's still people that don't believe in the vaccine, or they have not received the vaccination. I don't understand. You know, it's anyways. You know, Novak Djokovic is one of them that went to Australia. They, you know, started open, and he wanted to say, "Hey, I'm here and #1 in the world." And the Australian federation, they determined, no. If you are not vaccinated, I don't care who you are, you cannot enter the country. So I'm glad, you know.
Yeah, look, Australia the government has been very firm on this from the word go. And I think that's helped to keep the numbers of deaths and, you know, people getting COVID down. And that's, you know, it's been hard on some people, more so on some than others, but that's you know, that's why we've come out of it in a pretty good way so far.
Absolutely. Were you born like in a musical family, or no? How old were you when you perhaps began taking piano lesson or guitar lesson before keyboards? Was music?
Claudia, I was born in north of where I live now, up the Queensland coast, in a place called Rockhampton. My family, mum and dad, had a store there, you know, like a corner convenience store. And we moved from Rockhampton to Brisbane in the mid-60s, about 65, I think it was. And the family, my mum played piano a little bit. My 3 sisters learnt piano and played piano well. And I learnt when I was, you know, probably in primary school. I did lessons for a number of years. I didn't sit for exams. I didn't want to have to go through that process of being assessed, and it was nice just being able to learn and you know, understand music, and to be able to read music. I'm not the greatest, you know, sight reader. I'm not a very good sight reader, to be perfectly honest, but with the line of music that I do, that's not really important. My dad, who passed away about 21 years ago, he used to play harmonica, you know, and in his later years. So there's always been music in our family, and particularly also listening to music. I remember my sister Lucy, my eldest sister, she had all the, you know, the Beatles and the Beach Boys and the Dave Clark Five, all their 45s, and I'd be sitting up against her bedroom, you know, listening to her play her records. And that's right. My love of 45s and LPs came about because of that. And I think even going further back in the family, my dad's sister Ruby, who died very young, you know, she was only 18, and this was back in probably the 1930s or 40s. She used to be a very good pianist as well. So, and in my family now, one of my nephews, Alex, he's principal bass clarinet with the Sydney Symphony Orchestra.
Wow.
So yeah, so he's a very talented young man. Yeah.
Good for you. What kind of, when you were the equivalent of high school, what kind of music were you listening at the time?
Well, my high school years were from 74 through to 78. And so that was, you know, what I consider my era of music is the late 60s or the mid 60s through to, you know, the early 80s. That's what I particularly like. But, you know, what I was buying was probably pretty easy listening pop music at the time. But, you know, I also, that was when in 75, I think it was 75, was where I first got my taste of electronic music, because my sister Bernie used to do ballet, and her teacher had them dancing to tracks from Heaven and Hell by Vangelis. So that was one of the first things. And of course, one of my mates also came home to my place, probably wanting to meet up with one of my sisters, but he had just come from the local shopping centre and had bought Phaedra by Tangerine Dream.
Oh my God, what an album.
We played it over, this is about 75, we played it over and over and over until my dad, about 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock at night, said, turn that music off, you know. But music-wise, I mean, you know, I've always, I'm just trying to think back, but I like a lot of the Australian music particularly, you know, trying to think now of who I like, but my collection's quite large. It wouldn't be as large as your collection, Claudia, but I do have a lot of 45s and LPs and CDs now. I'm not really a digital person. I don't particularly like files. You know, I want to feel CD or a record, and I want to be able to
I know exactly. I'm the same way, man. I'm old school. You know, I need to open the vinyl, see the picture, you know, put on the turntable, you know, and listen both sides and look at the lyrics. And of course, it's very different than downloading music and you hear 10 seconds. I don't like this stuff. Go next. I don't like go next. No, that's not the way to enjoy music.
It's too easy, and also from the perspective of the time and effort you put into to actually put an album together. I mean, I still get CDs produced. Some artists don't these days. But I mean, you put a bit of effort into, I mean, part of the process is trying to work out a track order, which, you know, you as the artist want the album to feel like, you know, and with streaming and such, click, 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 as you were saying, and it kind of destroys the flow of the music. I mean, I know a lot of artists these days, you know, and I know it's the money way of doing it, to release singles first and then the album. But it's, I mean, I'm not a singles person. I produce the albums, and you know, and that's the way that I do it. But yeah.
Are your I noticed that in Bandcamp, I was able to find the album plus the stuff you sent me. I'm very grateful. Do you actually, people buy the CDs, or do you have anything on vinyl as well or not?
No vinyl, no vinyl.
But CDs, physical thing, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yes, I know a few of my music friends from the States. Keith Ritchie, for example, he's just organised the release of some of his music on LP, which is great. No, I think I'm sticking at this stage to the CDs, and look, I wouldn't say the sales are tremendous, Claudio, but it's more people downloading at this stage. But as I said, I'm old school. I would really still like to see that CD. To me, it almost doesn't feel like an album unless you have something there, you know, a CD that you can hold on to and feel, and you know.
Exactly. No, I know. I'm the same way. And I'm the same way. So when you decided so you finished high school, you said, well, music is, you know, I like Tangerine Dream, I like Edgar Froese, I like Vangelis at the time. Do you have any pressure from your parents to, hey, forget about music, you're not going to make any money, go to college, get a good job, forget about the electronic stuff that you will never make any money, or was it?
Well, to be perfectly honest, Claudia, I really wasn't a musician when I was at school or leaving school. When I left school, I got straight at a job with the Queensland government here in the state of Queensland, and I worked for them for 33 years. And at that stage, music was kind of me playing music left me for quite a few years. I didn't have access to a piano at home, and I hadn't got back into music at that stage. There was no pressure from my parents at all. I got back into music around about 2003, so it was quite a big gap. And I was still at work. I was still working full time, and at that stage, I had stopped all my studies, so I was able to focus on some of the music. And you know, it just came to me. I went through a little bit of a difficult time in 2001, and I needed something to get me out of that slump, and music was what I chose, and bought it. You know, I wasn't say cheap, but a Casio keyboard, and within about 3 months, I said, this is for me. And I bought my Korg synthesizers and a good computer and monitors and everything and software, and really started from scratch at that particular time. You know, so I didn't have that period from leaving school trying to develop my skills. There was this big gap, but in a way that was good, because I've been listening to so much music in that time, whether it be pop music, popular music, or whether it be, you know, I had got into Tangerine Dream very heavily at that stage, and Vangelis, and some of the more local people like Tony O'Connor and such, who did the new age type music. And so I had a little bit good background of things, but again, I didn't spread myself wide with electronic artist, I mean, I'm very limited in what I actually listen to and what I have in my collection. And that may be a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. But it's certainly, it's helped me to focus, I suppose, on what I like. Because with my music, Claudia, as you'd probably be able to tell from that most recent album, there's a lot of different styles on one album. And, you know, that has its good points and maybe it has its bad points. But I like a little bit of variety in the music that I listen to. And so that kind of comes through in what I put together. And I'm a bit of a sucker for a lovely melody, like, you know, Vangelis with his melody. So I always try and bring the melody into whatever electronic music that I do, other than the very spacey type stuff that I've done, and even dark ambient music. You know, not a lot of melody there, but there's a lot of atmosphere.
Well, you have done very well. I listened to the stuff you sent me, the stuff on Bandcamp, the stuff on Spotify, and man, you're a very talented guy, man. You're very humble, but very talented.
Thanks, Claudia. Yeah, well, like as I said, it's all very much self-taught and self-learned, and I enjoy it. It's a very serious hobby. You know, it's not a great money spinner, but it's you know, unfortunately, I'm in a position where I can focus on and the love of the music.
Are you still working full time, or you're kind of retired? No.
No, Claudia. Look, I stopped about this year will be 10 years ago. I stopped in December. What are we now? 2012. The 2012, I stopped, and for a few reasons, my health wasn't the greatest, and I think the opportunity was there for me to move on, and it gave me the chance to do the things that I really needed to do and wanted to do. And it was strangely enough, I mentioned that I started, you know, getting serious in the music in 2003, but it wasn't until 2015 that I actually went international. I recorded, you know, I don't know, maybe 15 or 16 albums, and kind of released them locally here to friends, family, and church group people and things like that. Then when I started to get a little bit more serious, this is what I want to focus on, I then started to send music overseas and get it up onto Bandcamp. And, you know, probably, unfortunately, I didn't take the right approach. I kind of sent a whole bundle of, you know, albums to overseas. So they all got released at the one time. And since that time, I think 15 or 16 albums I've released since what I consider I've gone international with the music.
But you have received many awards. Feel free to elaborate on those. I mean, you're very humble. You've received many. You're like a award-winning musician, man, and composer. You know.
Yeah, look, I've been lucky enough to be nominated for a few awards and to actually to win awards, and that's, you know, that's really wonderful. And I've had the opportunity twice to get over to New Orleans for the Zone Music Reporter Awards, which is like it's kind of like a step from the Grammys, where it kind of focuses on that new age category, but it then breaks it down into, you know, solo piano and acoustic instruments and electronic and ambient and chill and all those type of things. So I've had a few, I think three awards for 3 of my albums, which is, you know, really lovely. And I got to meet some great people, and one of the ones I got to meet was Fiona George-Hawkins, who's a wonderful pianist here in Australia, and she's won quite a few international awards. And you know, she lives here in Australia, and I get to meet her in New Orleans. It's crazy, you know.
It's that, of course, that's crazy, man. And how's it been? I mean, how are you doing in Bandcamp? You doing okay? I mean, it's a little bit of money because of Spotify. In Spotify, you need to have like a million hits to get a $5 check or something like that, right? So
yeah, look, I don't keep my eye on that too much, to be perfectly honest, Claudia, because I do it because I love what I'm doing. Yeah, look, there's certainly a little bit of money coming in, but, you know, probably one of the best sources is if you can get your music on something like Sirius XM. You know, that's where you actually get some money, you know. And I was lucky enough to have one track in rotation there the last year or so, and that's, you know, where some good money is. Otherwise, it's great to see that, you know, they're streaming, but as you know, with streaming sites, you know, one stream is what 0.0004%, you know, so I think I saw where, who was it? One of the really big artists were, got up, Peter Frampton, I think it was, wasn't it? Who got up and said, well, I've had about, 60 million hits on this and I've got $5,000.
Yeah. Yeah, you need to have like a lot of stuff. But why did you fall in love with electronic music? Why, you mentioned Tangerine, you mentioned Edgar, Froese, you mentioned Vangelis, right? Those are big names. Why that as opposed to, I don't know, pop or jazz or rock, other genres?
Well, look, I think if the love of music is really a lot. My sister, one of my sisters kind of laughed. She said, look, if someone ever comes to rob your house, they won't take your CD collection because it's too strange. Because there's a big variety of music. I have a little bit of classical, a lot of popular music and blues music and, some electronic music. But that early stage of hearing Tangerine Dream, there was quite a gap. There was probably a gap of about 5 years before I actually, could afford to buy my own Tangerine Dream album. And look, I think it was around about that early 80s mark, the White Eagle and Exit and Thief, the soundtrack to Thief, where I really started to go out and buy every week. I buy a new one. And so even though I had liked them before, I just didn't have the financial resource to go out and buy the back catalogue. Yeah. And I think I heard a fair bit of the Thief soundtrack. We had a sports program here called Sports Scene, and they would always have this particular track, and I managed to figure out that it was one of the tracks from the Thief score, and went out and bought that. And that was around about the time that Vangelis had released Chariots of Fire as well, and such a beautiful soundtrack. That particular album. So my love of electronic music was a little bit earlier, but to actually start adding it to my collection was probably 79, 80, around about that period of time. Yeah.
And then when did you begin writing your own music? When the early beginning? It was 2003?
About 2003. Yeah, about 2003. It started from when I first got the Casio. I just started recording, and actually, strangely, just recently, I gave the Casio to one of my sisters, and recorded within the little sequencer within it was some really early tracks of mine, and I thought, oh, I didn't realise that they were there, but you wouldn't want to hear it, but it was the start, of composing. And what I do now, Claudio, I'm just looking over the side here, but I've got a pile of what I write out, sheet music this much that I haven't ever recorded. So there's two approaches that I take. I either write it out, and I suppose if I ever have writer's block, I'll be able to go to that pile and hopefully understand what I've written there. But in more recent years, it's more going straight to the computer and recording something. At least it's down there the way that I actually want it to be. Whereas when it's written down, when I go back to it, it might be slightly different in my mind, but that's okay. But if I ever get writer's block, I've got plenty of music there to work on. Yeah.
And as you are recording a new album, you always record everything that you are making every day, and then you put it aside for a while to see if it doesn't work in the theme or a particular album, and you always have ideas in the background, right, for a new album, or perhaps, I don't know, if an album has 12 tracks, you may write 30 and then pick the 12 that will flow together in that album, right, and to keep the other in the background. That's the way it works, right? Yeah,
look, I know a lot of artists, particular pop artists, they compose tracks for an album. They release one album and then they're composing for the next. I just compose all the time and record all the time. And that's why you might see, you may not have seen the liner notes, Claudio, on some of my albums, but I actually state, that these tracks were composed and recorded between March 2008 and 2022. And I've got, probably 30 or 40 hours of music that I've recorded that I haven't released. Yeah. So when I release an album, and I tend to alternate. I tend to do a more ambient album one year and an electronic album the next, or maybe a mix of electronic and ambient together. Like the second last album, Threshold of the Universe, was supposed to be a full ambient album, but I ended up adding some, sequences to it as well. So I don't compose specifically for an album, but I then go back and listen to everything. I have them kind of filed in groups so that I know what style of music it is. So it might be ambient or electronic or melodic electronic or weird. And then I just think, okay, what album am I going to compose? What's the theme of it? And then I go back and listen. And oftentimes, for example, a track I might have recorded in 2008, I revisit it. It might be that's very rough, or I want to add strings to it, or new bass, or a new sequence, or some strange ambiences or sounds to it, and then it kind of comes together. And I might start off with 4 hours of music, then I cut it down to 2 hours of music, then an hour and a half of music, and then I try and get it to just over 60 to 65, 70. So wow. I know that I think, oh, okay, well, I can use those on my next album if I want to, that's the approach that I've been taking to it for many years. I'm very lucky that I've got a bit of a back catalogue. And also, Claudio, one of my main keyboards here is called Karma, and it has a 16-track sequencer. And everything I do a lot of improvised music. A lot of my ambient albums are just sitting down, pressing record and playing. And that's it. And sometimes if I release an album, I might add a little bit to the top, a little bit of overdubbing, but not a huge amount. But I went back, I've got, 2,000 tracks recorded like that. And during COVID, I took the chance to actually go back and I generally mark next to it if I think there's a bit of an opportunity to work on a track. And I went back and listened to everything. And I actually got probably about 30 or 40 tracks from that, and then recorded them. And they're in my database now to actually use later on. So, having the sequencer on the keyboard was great. But now I tend to record directly, more so to the computer. Yeah.
Good for you. How difficult? Your first album was First Light, right? Yeah. How difficult was to put for the most part, the first thing you do would be harder because, it takes a lot of effort, money to put it together, putting yourself out there. You don't know you like it because that's what you do it because you like it, you want to release it. You don't know what the public will think or your friends will think about that. How difficult was time consuming, emotional, putting the first album together? Was difficult to put it together?
Well, Claudio, I was still working at the time, and again, it was really it was something to try and get me out of a bit of a hole, really, and so it wasn't really difficult. I had recorded a number of songs, and I used to release little demo CDs. Actually, I think the first thing I actually recorded, I used to record to the sequences, on my chord, and I produced I borrowed a mini disc player from a friend of mine and put 8 tracks into a mini disc. So I've got a mini disc of an early version of my First Light album. Then it went on to cassette, and then eventually, when I had all the gear here, it went on to a new version of it. Went on to CD or CDR, because I didn't get the CDs manufactured then. It's just the CDR version of it. And look, it wasn't a difficult process. It was just an enjoyable process, and it's an album that is really not available anywhere other than, I don't even have it now available on my website, and I'll explain the reason for that. But a lot of people around here, the local area, the church groups and friends and family, one of their favorites, because it's very, perfect for relaxation and meditation, things like that. And it's where I go to the chiropractor, he's been playing it for the last 7 years non-stop in 2 rooms. I said, if I had $1 for every time he played it, I'd be a millionaire. That's right.
That's what I was thinking. Where's your check?
he's a friend of mine. So, and every time I go in there, I said, oh, this album isn't too bad. Oh, gee, that timing's not the best, because it was all improvised. You know, I didn't have metronomes going, or I didn't use MIDI. I just played. So one of my thoughts, Claudio, is that should I go back and revisit the album and, you know, re-record bits of it? And look, next year, no, 2024 will be the 20th anniversary. I thought, well, maybe I should try to do that, to release it. I'm a little bit concerned about releasing some of the stuff that is early, because, you know, it is part of my progression in music. But also I did have some bad experiences of someone buying it. One of them, for example, and next minute it was up on a website for free somewhere, and I didn't, you know, and they even said, well, we bought this and I can now put it up for free. Well, no. So I straight away I took them off from being available for sale. I thought, well, that's not really what I want. I want to make sure everybody has the opportunity to listen to it, you know.
Of course, yeah. No, and then so you put, you know, when you had the first copy, you know, whether it was on a disc or a CDR, were you able to send it to some radio station, friends, family, businesses? Did they play the stuff, or was you did it because you wanted to do it? It was for you, you know, as a, you know, relief for what you were going through in your life, whatever, and you put your stuff out there, and then you know, it's a beautiful thing, you know. The first thing, like I remember the first my interview, you know, the best guitarist, or one of the best guitarists in the world, Steve Hackett. I was nervous. I thought about, and this guy's in English, will be understand my accent or the question that I want to ask him. Of course, I researched his life, and I knew he was a member of Genesis because I've been following that. But I think, what the heck, I need to do it. And then the first thing you do was harder, and then the second was easier, and the third is easier, and so on, right? I suppose that, you know, that's the way life is. You know, you need to take risk, and
yeah, of course,
go, you know, get it over with. You know, so
that's right. Yes, the first Light album, Claudio, really hasn't been released internationally at all. It's just a local release, and I hope to at some stage to get it out. There's been a lot of albums. I mean, some of the tracks would need a little bit of work now to get them up to, you know, a better standard. But I'm very proud of what I've done, and it's all part of the progression of the music. You know, I mean, I wasn't you know, I didn't go to university. I didn't study sound engineering or anything like this. I've just done this for myself, but with a bit of help from friends. I mean, people like Mike Hunter he performs under the name of Ambient. I don't know if you know Mike. He has a radio show called Music with Space. He just gave me a few little tips about, you know, of mastering a CD and stuff like that. So you know, it's good to have friends, you know, on Facebook and through email that can help you out with some of these things. So I started from scratch, and I got to a point where, you know, I'm not the world's best mixer or masterer, but I think I put out something which is, you know, people will listen to, hopefully.
Are you right now, you're doing self-releasing, or you're going to a record label, or?
I have always done everything myself, Claudio. I do the from the composing, recording, mixing, mastering, you know, dealing with the manufacturers of the CDs. I do all my own sending out of the CD, you know, putting them into envelopes and I do individual letters to everybody. You know, it's not a Romeo letter that goes to people. It's a personal letter, and it's and personal emails to people. It's the approach that I've taken. Maybe I might get a wider field through and there's some lovely people. I've met some lovely people here in New Orleans who are great promoters of the style of music that we do. But I kind of felt that I wanted to. It's a bit like I remember saying this in another interview, that when I recorded electronic music originally, a lot of the sequences I just did it by hand. You know, I didn't do MIDI or anything like that, or press a button and it all did it. And then the interviewer was kind of a little bit surprised, and you know, kind of said, "Oh, he says," but I did, you know. And then I realised, well, to be up with the big boys, you've got to do it a little bit slightly, you know, a little bit more sensible and do it slightly differently. So I've always tried to do most of it myself, and in a way, by doing it yourself, you learn, you know, how to do things, you know. And you know, as I said, I'm not the greatest master in the world, but you know, I'm not Bob Ludwig or whatever his name is, but I think I produce a relatively, you know, pretty good quality product.
Oh, absolutely. In terms of your gear, you like analog, digital. You do a combination of both. What do you?
Look, I don't have a lot of equipment, Claudio. I have 2 Korg Karmas and a Yamaha MX49, and I've got a new Korg Wave State, which is still in the box, and I've had it for about 6 months. I just haven't had the time or the room here to kind of
Put it together.
And I've got I'm looking here at the moment. I've got an Arturia Mini Brute 2, which again is still in the box. But I have a lot of soft synths, a lot of VST, virtual instruments. I have a very, very good collection of virtual instruments. So I either play directly through to the MX49, the Yamaha, or through the Korg Karma, and as a MIDI controller. And you know, the strings that I use on most of my music are from the Korg Karma, a sound that I created myself. And I always go back to it because I just find it's the best that suits the electronic music as well, you know. So yeah.
And you right now you have, remind me, you have done over 30 albums, right?
Yeah, I've lost count, but it's about 30 or 32, 33, something like that. Yes.
My God, that's amazing, man. What's the motivation to keep on going?
Just the love of music. I'm always in. You know, there's got to be something going on, because I mean, where do these melodies and ideas come from? Well, is it from me myself? Well, I think there's got to be other, you know. Hopefully Edgar's up there helping me, and Vangelis and Klaus all helping me. But you know, I'm sure it's just the process. It's challenging. Sometimes it's frustrating, but you kind of sit down and you feel a little bit inspired. You know, you feel, you know, motivated to do it. I mean, I go through patches. I mean, I haven't really sat down at my keyboards and played for probably about 3 or 4 weeks, but that's because I've been focusing on getting a new album out. Sure. And you know, it's not an easy process to get an album out when you do it yourself. It's really quite time consuming and, you know, demanding. And I've just released it, what is it now, just over a week ago, and I'm kind of coming down from that process, and very shortly I'll get back into, you know, what I love to do, which is sitting down and just improvising and thinking, oh, that sounds good. That might be a good chorus or a verse or a good sequence, or, you know, that sound is great. I have to remember that for the next track. Yeah, the motivation's always there. I mean, we're alive, and I'm alive, and I'm breathing, and I live in a beautiful part of the world.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you think that if you look back in your life, do you think you end up picking music, or I think music choose you instead?
Well, Claudia, I've always had the love of music, as I mentioned earlier. You know, my sister had 45s when she was, you know, in her later teens, and I was very, very young at that stage, and I would sit up against her bedroom door and listen to the Beach Boys and the Beatles and Dave Clark 5 and Helen Shapiro and all those people. And I just loved music and buying music and feeling it. So I think that motivation is always, the music is always going to be part of my life. And whether it be listening to the radio, or whether it be putting on one of my CDs, not my CDs, but one of my CDs in my collection that I listen to. You know, it's really, music is the sound. Sounds stupid, but it's the soundtrack of your life, isn't it? I mean, some days.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Going, and I often say that Tangerine Dream or Vangelis really is the soundtrack of my life, because even when in my years of studying at the University of Queensland here and the Queensland Institute of Technology, when I was writing assignments, I'd always have their music playing behind me, or similar types of music playing behind it, and it filled that void, you know, from hearing the cars going, you know, outside. You just had this type of ambience around you, and I think it helped with, you know, being able to focus on what you had to do in writing an assignment. You know, I ran marathons for many years. Claudio, I was quite a good marathon runner, and going to every race, I'd be in the car and I'd be listening to Underwater Sunlight, the Tangerine Dream album.
Wow.
And every time, you know, and it just gave me that inspiration. That album, it just really inspired me on my drive to wherever I was going to race. So, you know, that's really showing that it was a part of my life. You know.
Oh, no, absolutely amazing, amazing. What about? Have you ever done music for, you know, films or television kind of stuff?
Well, look, I say in my bio that music for film and television, but that's more the fact that what I compose is stuff which is suitable for that. I've actually entered some competitions. We used to have a film festival here in Australia called Tropfest. It was a short film festival, and it's quite well known around the world. And they would have a competition as part of that called Trop Score, TROP score, Trop Score. And a number of years I entered, you know, submissions for that, and I still have them here and go back to them every now and again. And to be perfectly honest, it was a challenging experience. I mean, people say to me, "Boy, your music would be great in this film or this film." It would be, but I think the pressure kind of gets put on if you've actually got a film in front of you and you've got to compose. Maybe it's better to do it the way Tangerine Dream did with Sorcerer. I mean, they had already composed they composed the music without even seeing the film in that particular.
That's unbelievable. Yeah, I saw a documentary for William Friedkin explaining that, and it's amazing how they did it without even seeing the movie. Well, the movie is going to be about this and that, and it's going to be filmed in the jungle. How they put it together is amazing.
Yeah, it is. I think these days, I mean, you know, what I was told was if you really want to get into film, you really need to connect up with some of the students who are learning film, and, you know, say, look, I can do this for free for you. And when they actually become producers, directors, whatever, they then rely on the people who they've used in the past. But I also think that the film scoring, you know, community is quite a niche community. I don't know how easy it really is to get into it. And
it's very difficult, actually.
Yeah, if the opportunity came around,
yeah,
you know, and someone said, "Well, I'd like you to do this," or I'd like it if they said, "I'd love this piece of music." But you know, if the opportunity ever came, I'd certainly give it a shot. But they'd have to understand that it's you know, being a first timer with doing something that big, that, you know, there might be challenges. But hey, I'm up for the challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to concentrate in the album, two albums, the 2020, When Eternity Touches Time. That's a beautiful, man. That's a very beautiful. You're very humble. I know you're well known out there, and I listened last night. You know, you sent me some material. I went to a Bandcamp or Spotify, I don't remember, and you know, I put my headphone. I drink a beer last night, and it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful piece, man.
Okay,
How was it? Feel free to elaborate on the process of putting that album together. And
yeah, look, it's pretty similar. I'll just grab it out here while I look at the tracks. I always forget what the title of the tracks are, you know, because you kind of name those at the end. But
that's right.
That's right. Look, it's certainly the same process, Claudio. I had a number of tracks that were electronic, more up tempo or melodic type tracks that I could choose from, and I had a theme. I'm always looking out for song titles now, whether it be in lyrics of a song or words from a book, from a prayer, from whatever. And I get two words that I think, you know, for example, eternal changelessness. I mean, that's from a particular prayer that I know of, and I think, you know, that really is wonderful. You know, wonderful words, and I think there's another one, Perpetual Epiphany. They're just things that I hear, and I've got a little, I'm pointing up here, but there's a pile of about this high of notes that I write. And when I come to write, put an album together, I think, yeah, they really sound good. And this one was based on, I've been very blessed in my life, Claudio, that I have a great family, and I have had some wonderful friends, and most of them were older friends, and, most of them have passed on, and, and I've been carer for quite a few people as well, two people over the years. And they kind of, this album was released in 20, which was just after one of those friends of mine passed away. So that's where the, where eternity touches time kind of comes into it. So that was the theme of the album, was about life and what's beyond. And, and that's how some of the song titles came about. But it kind of came together very, very well. It actually, it was one of the ones that did win an award, Claudio, last year, I think in July, Zone Music Reporter Awards. It was, because of COVID, none of the awards were actually physically taking place, but it was all done online. But it was really lovely to get an award for that album. It just, it was nice to receive it. But it's a nice album. It's got some, it's got a combination of melodic electronic as well as some Berlin school, and it kind of covers quite a few bases, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, it's a very beautiful album. And the latest one, the latest project, Somewhere in Between, is an excellent album as well. Feel free to elaborate on how that album came together. And begin, what's the meaning, Somewhere in between? What it means to you?
Well, a little bit like, when eternity touches time in a way. It's kind of like, between here and into the eternity. It's kind of like, and a lot of times it's like where we are in our own minds. I mean, sometimes we're confused, we're happy, we're sad, we're grieving, we feel isolated with COVID. So it's kind of finding that spot somewhere within your soul or within your own body of where you are and where you feel comfortable. And that was really the concept behind the album. Actually, the title, Somewhere in Between, I always, one of my favorite movies from I think it was the 80s or late 70s, was the China Syndrome. And Stephen Bishop sang the theme song, and it was called Somewhere in Between. And I always loved that title. And I knew at some stage down the track, it's slightly different. I put a hyphen in between the in and the between, but
that's right.
And that in itself gives it a slightly different connotation as well. But it's just that I might hear something and I write it down. But the album, again, I wanted variety in the music, and as I said, some people may not like the idea that there's so much variation in it, but it's my album, and that's the way that I would like to hear an album, that there is a little bit of, look, Berlin School's great, but 70 minutes of Berlin School you can take or leave. I do like it at certain times, but sometimes you want to put on an album where you think, oh, you can think about a track, or you think, oh, that's a lovely melody. And then there's a more deep track. There's a little bit of variety through it. Maybe good driving music. One of my friends says, oh, I love listening to your Yesterday Passing album when I drive, and I think, well, that's nice. Keeps him awake, doesn't put him to sleep.
That's right. I really like that album. I have listened to that album probably 3 or 4 times already in the last 24 hours.
Yeah, that's good.
That's a masterpiece. And and I wonder the hyphen in between, the in and between. I knew that was meaningful. I mean, people do stuff on purpose.
Yeah.
So it's.
Yeah, I mean, these days probably most people would just not use the hyphen, but I think it just changed it slightly for me to have that, and even trying to get that up on through CD Baby, there was a struggle trying to get the hyphen in there and to get the capitals in the right place, but that was part of the challenge.
Right,
and
yeah.
I fought for it and I got it, which is the way that I wanted it to be,
Yeah. Where do you think that music come from in general, in your opinion?
Well, yeah, I mean, for me personally or generally, Claudio?
To me, to you, no, to you.
Yeah, to me, look, you know, I'm very much a spiritual person. I love the nature here where I live, but I very much believe in, you know, the fact that there are beings, angels, and you know, loved ones who are helping you out. And I think that, you know, why is it that there are discoveries of, you know, medications to fix this particular ailment done at the same time around the world? Why are they kind of found at the same time? There's got to be something helping with it. I'm sure it's got to do with ourselves, you know, the fact that this is what I want to do and this is what I enjoy doing. So you're kind of open to ideas and hearing, and I'm sure that what I've heard and listened to in the past through my CD and record collection and through radio, that you kind of learn from that. You know, it's quite funny, Claudio. I released a Christmas track called Another Christmas Eve on one of my albums, which I'm trying to remember which album it was. But anyway, I then re-released it, remastered and remixed it about last year, I think it was, 2 years ago. And it was funny that one of the ladies who reviewed it for the album, she said, it's a really beautiful track. And she said, and the bridge, he even borrows from Pachelbel's Canon in D. And I thought, oh my goodness, I did too. And I didn't realize it, that, you know, this particular bridge, the bridge in the song was actually part of Pachelbel's Canon. I felt so embarrassed that, you know, that I had borrowed it without even acknowledging it,
yeah,
without realizing it, you know, and it was someone else picking up on it, you know, that was really quite, you know, I was a little bit shocked first of all, but then I thought, oh well, you know, that's life, and maybe, you know, some songs do sound a little bit similar at certain times.
Absolutely. Do you believe in life after this life?
Oh yeah, very much so. Oh yeah.
Have you seen the other side?
Have I seen it? I suppose, you know, when I'm sleeping, I travel there all the time, Claudio. But I really feel that the very first, I think I told you about, that when I first got into music, I was a little bit down. I was quite depressed at the time, and I had very clear advice, you know, whether it be my angels, but you've got to do something to get out of this. I said, what do I do? Music. Oh yes, I love music. No, you've got to compose music.
Create it, right?
So it was very clear.
Yeah.
Whether that was my mind or whatever, I firmly believe it was, you know, some form of angelic assistance that helped me, and I opened myself here to whatever might be there to help me with my music now. And you know, there might be people that don't believe that, but I firmly do, and that's makes me comfortable, and it helps me in life generally, and it helps me with my music.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, one day we'll have a conversation about that. I like you. I have, let me put it to you that way. I have seen the other side, and I have experienced it too. You know, so
lucky man.
And you know, I grew up in a Catholic family, right, in South America. I was born in Chile, and I came to the United States to study after high school. And I grew up in a, you know, with the Jesuits. I went to a Catholic school. They told me this thing and that thing and that thing, and then through experience of my life, I began something thing, experiencing thing, and everything, or the majority of the stuff that the Catholic Church told me about, you know, good and evil and this or that. If you don't do good things, you go to hell or that. That's a nonsense, you know. Hell doesn't exist at all. Heaven doesn't exist. You're not punished or rewarded for this. And we come from that particular life to do a specific things, and you know, we are energy, if you will, having a human experience. Has nothing to do with it. That really dying doesn't exist. It's a myth, you know. We don't really die. we cross over, you know, family members are waiting for us and so on and so forth. And then we came to this particular earth to do a specific thing. And, you know, I believe in reincarnation. There's so much research of reincarnation and that exists. And God as a person perhaps doesn't exist. More than a genuine, a he or she or it. You know, I don't know that. But the other thing that I do a lot of research, I end up finding out and contacting different people to explain to me. And when we, you know, we pick our parents, we end up selected at the time that we are born. We are given the option of 3 or 4 families, and depending on where you come to this particular planet to do something very specific, to learn about that or to learn about that or whatever, you know, we end up picking our family up, our bringing, and so on. No, it isn't an accident. So
yeah, look, I agree. I was raised in a Roman Catholic family too, Claudio, and I continue to go to masses, and but I have expanded out into the more, you know, the spiritualist church type of things as well. And that's where I first, you know, it was around about that time when I first got my inspiration with music as well. So I think that helped with the process. And for many years, the last when I mentioned when eternity touches time, I said I was a carer for an old friend. He was actually a priest for 65 years. So I've had the connection through his church, and when he passed away, I had to hold things together for 20 months at the church, leading lay services for 20 months every Thursday and every Sunday. So I certainly know, you know, a fair bit about the church, and I was educated by the Morris brothers here in Queensland. And but yes, you know, as you go through life, you realise that some of the stuff that you were told, not, you know, some of it's good, and some of it's, you know, it was there for a purpose, and you get a greater understanding as you progress through life. Some people do, some people don't, some people don't believe, and you know, that's of course their right to. But I feel a little bit sorry when you know, people don't have the thoughts about you know, what happens when you die. I remember an old mate of mine, he was in his 90s and his wife died, you know, 5 years earlier. And John was a lovely fellow, really sweet fellow. But, you know, he'd been with his wife kind of 75 years or something. They were 12 when they first started dating, you know. And he said, oh, she's gone, she's dead, it's nothing. And I said, John, that's not the case. She's looking after you now, you know. And I think towards the end, I think I started to convince him, I think. I'm sure he's up there now having a great time.
of course, that's what life is about, right? Man, your journey in many ways have been like a good bottle of wine. If you drink wine, you know, you're getting better with, you know, you're getting better with time and more refined your music. So it's, I'm glad you have chosen that path, man. You know, from the first record, that I'm glad that you have chosen the path of music. You know, from 202 to now 2022, 28 years later, 30 or so, 33 albums. You're doing well, man.
I'm better looking now, Claudio.
I don't know about that, but
no, look, I haven't led a wild, exciting life, but I've led a life that I've enjoyed. You know, as Absolutely. I mentioned, I'm very much a homebody, but I do what I like to do in my life, and that's really all you can ask for. Is I've got a great family, I've got amazing friends who have passed and those who are with me now. I'm very blessed. I have enough money to buy some lovely computer gear to do my recording, and you know, I've got some abilities and skills to put it down. You know, can't get any better than that. And I've got a beautiful house here with, you know, wallabies coming down and birds coming down every day to see me, so can't complain.
Yeah, looking back on your musical career, what moment, if you can pick 2 or 3 that are important to you, or any regrets or things you would have done differently?
That's with the music.
Yeah.
I suppose that initial Jim, you've got to go and do something to change your life, because of that, you know, I think oftentimes it's really what's happened in your past that kind of leads you to where you are. I mean, I know that there's different pathways you could have taken, and I mean, I might have taken this path a lot earlier if I wasn't a carer for someone for certain years or what, but that's part of my experience. That was part of my life. There's certainly no regrets, and I don't think I would have taken any different approach with it. But I think it all has fallen into place. That initial thing, and definitely, and I suppose some of the contacts I've had who have kind of given me a little bit of inspiration. I mean, before I went international, I actually did send an album overseas to where I buy CDs from now, CD services in Scotland, and they did reviews. And the fellow who did the reviews there, Andy, was also on radio, and he actually played one track of mine from a very early, from Century, I think it is, Orion, which is on Bandcamp. And it was about 5 or 6 years later. That would have been in about, I don't know when that would have been, probably about 2010. It was 5 years later when I went international. And I think it was, I think the first track was, a track that was played internationally after that was on Echoes, John Diliberto's Echoes program. And that was another inspiration to actually hear yourself on the radio, you know, for that first time. You think, oh my goodness, that's me on the radio.
Wow.
I still, even to this day, if I happen to hear one of my pieces of music, I think, oh goodness, who's that?
Good for you, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, what else? I definitely, you know, the awards that I won. That, you know, awards aren't everybody's cup of tea, and you know, I don't go out of my way to get them. But it's lovely when you are presented, you know, with things like that. It gives you a little bit more inspiration and motivation to continue on, and getting feedback from people. You know, it's I have people review my music, and I've had some great reviews. I've had most of them have been good. One of them was, I took it on board as very good advice, and I think that that's helped me with it, where it wasn't very positive about the album, but it kind of gave me thought, you know, maybe I need to think about this a little bit more. And so having, you know, just even someone, if they email you saying, hey, I really love this track, or this, you know, one of the really lovely ones early on was a lady who said to me that her sister, when she was dying of cancer, she wanted really the whole room cleared, and she just wanted some music played. And it was I think it was the first Light album that my very first album that she wanted played. And I thought, well, that was a lovely thing.
Oh, amazing. Yeah,
amazing.
That
was, you know, I've heard a few little stories like that, but that was the one that really sticks with me.
Yeah, man. Good. What do you do for music what do you do when nothing music related? What do you do for fun? That nothing to do with music. Hiking and
well, look,
outdoors.
As I said, years ago, I was a marathon runner, so that was, you know, running was always, you know, training, and I was very serious. I was very serious about the marathons. These days, I do walk, and I do like to swim. I don't swim as much as I used to, but I do walk every morning, and it's my opportunity just to, you know, think and talk and do a bit of reading. Geez, it's interesting. What do I do, Claudia? I'm just trying to think what I do. It's just that I'm on a little bit of a property here as well, so there's a bit of work to be done around the property itself. I don't do as much as I used to. With my back and my neck these days, I struggle a little bit, but I do what I'm able to, and I have, as I said, I have wildlife that comes down to my property. Each day I feed, you know, kookaburras and currawongs and magpies, and, you know, they all come down. And I've got family. I do, you know, visit elderly friends of mine as well. That's been part of my life for about 30 odd years, you know, looking after older folks. So that's part of my life, and hopefully will remain part of my life.
Good for you, man. Yeah. And the last question, feel free to elaborate your website, you know, the Bandcamp, where listener can buy your music, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, I do have my own website, Claudio. It's JimOttaway.com. That's JimOttaway.com. And on that website, there's different pages for news and chart news and discography and where you can buy. And if you go to the discography, click on the album, it'll have generally all the links where people can buy either a physical album or download. And I'm on all the Bandcamp if they do a search under Jim Ottaway, and all the normal streaming sites like Spotify and iTunes and Amazon and Deezer, Tidal, Pandora, all those particular sites. And the CDs are physically available through, I do send to CD Baby, and I think they sell through Amazon. But in Australia, there's Red Eye Records in Sydney and Rocking Horse Records in Brisbane. And in Scotland, there is CD Services. And in America, there's the Lloyd Bart Productions. Lloyd stocks some of my CDs there as well. So they're on the web and through some sites. But it's all on my webpage if they go to JimOttaway.com.
Yeah. Well, Jim, it was very nice talking to you, man. Keep up the good work. You 30 album. I want to see 50, and you have, you have another 50 years in front of you, man. So keep on working hard, keep on producing good music, the stuff you like, and put it up there, and keep on doing well. You're doing very well, man.
Well, thanks, Claudio. I very much appreciate that. And as I've mentioned, I've got a lot of music that's been recorded. So if that they'll eventually get onto. But if anything ever happens to me, I'll have to show my family where it is so they can release all the.
I will release it.
I might become famous.
Yeah, I will. Well, hopefully, one day I will. I will end up meeting you personally. I need to make a trip to Australia. Never been there, and I was looking picture of Queensland, and it's very beautiful, man. So I need to go there with a family soon, man.
Yes. Claudia, I was just saying, I think I posted on Facebook last night that I recently saw the Elvis biopic, the new film about Elvis.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was filmed here in my city here in the Gold Coast.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's quite amazing because I thought, God, that's got to be Graceland, but it wasn't. I mean, it was all sets made here, so it's a beautiful part of the world, and by all means. You get down here, we encourage people to come to Australia now that all the borders are all opened up again. But yeah, thanks for the opportunity to talk to Claudio. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm glad you like the music, and we can get the word out about it. I very much appreciate it.
Sure, no problem. Thank you very much, Jim. Have a great
Thanks,
rest of your day today.
Thank you.
Thank you.